成條題目咧，你見到個脈絡其實好清晰嘅。首先問駁量啦，跟住問心率啦，去到最後尾終於問心輸出啦。咁多位大家好，我係梁 Sir。卷2嘅解題咧正式啟動啦。咁啊，記得翻啦，卷2做1個鐘，4個單元揀2個去做，即係每一個單元做半個鐘啦。而每一個單元咧就有2個分題嘅，咁即係每15分鐘就要完成一個分題啦。咁我相信大家對於呢4個單元咧都應該唔陌生嘅，尤其是學校教你嗰2個單元啦，係咪？有啲學校咧就直頭教晒嘅，跟住咧就等啲學生自己揀嘅。咁的確係有啲扯嘅，不過學校有學校嘅追求啦，係咪？咁啊，未來日子咧。教育局咧都會公布翻新嘅生物科課程嘅，咁但係對於未來呢3年嘅 DSE 考生27、28、29咧，其實冇影響嘅。所以啦，題目咧都照解啦。咁啊，解卷嘅次序咧，我就先會解咗近呢5年嘅 DSE 題目先。咁啊，單元都係順住噶啦 ，ABCD 咁樣去啦。與此同時咧，我都會輯翻一啲相關嘅外國試題咧，俾你哋去做一做嘅。咁用咧 DSE 嘅生物科課程咧，其實同外國咧可以話係9成幾相似嘅。咁其中一個唔同嘅原因啦，就係佢哋嘅情景問題啦，係咪？佢哋用翻當地嘅一啲數據或者例子啦，去設計個題目啦。第二個唔同咧，就係啲術語問題啦。不過啲術語咧好容易解決嘅啫。例如啦，我哋 DSE 咧就用呢個 differentially permeable membrane 差異透性嘅膜嘅。但係啦，外國咧佢會用翻 selectively permeable membrane 選擇性滲透嘅膜嘅。咁其實兩隻字眼咧，以前喺 A level 都出現過嘅。不過而家去到 DSE 咧，我哋就淨係學一隻字就夠啦。咁所以有陣時你去做下外國題目，你會發現點解個隻字唔同嘅？咁啊唔怕嘅，因為啦，當我輯啲題目俾你做嘅時候咧，我已經調色咗噶啦。咁啊，肯定咧，你用嘅字眼咧係同 DSE 所考嘅字眼係一致先啦。咁除咗 DSE 嘅卷2解題之外咧，咁我以前都拍咗段片咧，係有關於去讀啊或者溫啊卷2嘅意識嘅，單止 Section A 嘅 B、C、D 咧我都拍晒嘅。咁啊，詳情咧就快快睇翻2025年嘅 DSE 終極檢閱啦，掌握翻卷2嘅學習心法。好，咁啊事不宜遲啦，咁我哋就嚟睇下2025年卷2 Section A 嘅 Part A 啦。今次呢條題目咧係講緊一個年輕嘅男子參加咗一個為期1年嘅帶氧運動訓練計劃。為一個訓練計劃啦，梗係想睇下啲 before and after 啦，係咪？咁所以喺訓練計劃前與後咧，研究人員都分別量度咗喺佢休息嘅時候一個心動周期 cardiac cycle 佢嘅 left ventricle 左心室血量嘅改變。咁所以啦，下面 x-axis 咧就係時間啦。Y-axis 咧就係喺一個心動周期底下佢嘅左邊嘅心室究竟啦有幾多血液喺當中咯。而第一部分咧就係考下我哋點樣去閱讀圖表去揾一啲相關嘅數據咧，同埋計一計數咯。要計下佢嘅搏量啦 stroke volume、心率 heart rate 同埋呢個心輸出 cardiac output 嘅。咁啊唔使審啦，呢條題目梗係考全市技能啦，係咪？第一個好緊要嘅概念咧就係你識唔識得閱讀圖表啦。呢度5格為之20個 cm cube， 咁即係一格咧就係4個 cm cube。你呢度睇錯嘅話咧，你個搏量已經可以玩完噶啦。你睇翻唔同嘅考生事例啦，其實真係可以睇錯晒嘅。咁呢一 part 真係要好小心。其次啦，就係計數咯，就計翻我哋嘅心輸出啦。心輸出點樣計㗎？就係由我哋嘅 stroke volume 搏量乘翻我哋嘅心率，就係1分鐘究竟我哋嘅心臟能夠泵走幾多嘅血啦？呢個就叫心輸出啦。咁借個機會啦，亦都去溫埋咩叫心率同埋搏量啦。心率就係1分鐘入面究竟你心跳咗幾多下？而搏量 stroke volume 咧，就係當一下心跳嘅時候，究竟你個左心室 left ventricle 究竟能夠泵走到幾多血咯噃？咁而家啦，先去睇下搏量先啦。搏量點樣睇啊？就係睇下最高同埋最低咯。所以啦，我哋先睇下訓練前就係下面呢一條 curve 啦。咁啊，120係最高，落到去40上咗幾多格？上咗4格，一格為之4，4、4、16，咁即係56啦。咁所以啦，就64個 cm cube 啦。跟住啦，訓練之後咧，就係140就最高，下面啦就係3格4、3、12，咁即係52啦，咁即係88個 cm cube 咯。然後去到心率又點樣計咧？你望一望成個心動周期呢條線咯。 OK 就係由高跟住低，跟住又上翻去。咁其實呢一個情況咧，就係為之一個心動周期啦。咁所以啦，0.8秒完成咗一個心跳，咁即係1 over 0.8係咪？一下心跳用咗0.8秒係咪？咁當然啦，1分鐘入面係幾多秒啊？60秒，咁所以啦，乘翻60就得啦。或者啦，另一款理解咯，60除0.8咪即係話60秒入面有幾多個0.8秒啫嘛？哦，就有75個啦。咁即係1分鐘有75下嘅心跳啦。而啦，訓練後咧就啱啱好係1秒就一下啦。咁所以啦，1分鐘咧個心就跳咗60下啦。咁所以啦，兩條數乘翻埋佢就係4800同埋5280咯。咁去到第二部分啦，題目咧就想我哋用翻第一部分所得出嘅答案啦，就係建議一下究竟我哋嘅心臟結構有啲咩嘅變化，導致到啦呢個 stroke volume 嘅改變咧，然後解釋你嘅答案。咁啊 stroke volume 點樣改變啊？64去到88增加咗啦，梗噶啦，係咪？咁你要留意翻啦，題目咧因為係冇同你講過究竟呢個 stroke volume 搏量嘅改變，佢淨係話改變咗啫。上升定下降啊？冇同你講過嘅，所以啦，其中1分咧，你要講咗個改變先，所以你個思考應價咧有1分咧係嚟自於心搏量嘅改變嘅。咁今次呢條題目咧就要我哋去建議咩啊？建議咧個心臟結構有啲咩嘅改變，然後解釋下點解呢個改變會導致到呢個搏量嘅變化。咁第一部分啦，唔使審啦。訓練之後嘅搏量係增加咗，呢一句你係要寫嘅，然後就開始要解釋咯。今次呢條題目考我哋嘅咧就係有關於心臟嘅結構啦，同埋機能啦，係咪？咁心臟就攞嚟泵血就大家都知噶啦。咁但係心臟啦，佢嘅組成部分主要係咩咧？自不然就係心臟肌肉啦，對不對啊？咁但係心臟肌肉收縮攞嚟泵血啫，你個心臟都要有個位置去載血噶嘛。所以啦，你嘅 heart chamber， 你嗰啲心腔咧，你都要理解嘅，係咪啊？你嗰個 atrium 啊、ventricle 啊，就係嗰個空間去承載住啲血。然後當心臟肌肉收縮嘅時候，一泵咁樣就走咗啦嘛。咁當我哋講完啦心臟嘅結構同埋功能之後咧，咁我哋就要講下呢個結構上嘅改變係點樣導致到呢個搏量嘅變化咯，即係有所提升啊嘛，係咪？我哋咧有2個思考邏輯嘅，就係搏量上升嘅2個可能性。第一個啦，就係個 heart chamber 咧係變大咗，可以收多啲血。咁當佢再泵嘅時候，咪泵走多啲血咯，此其一。第二啦，就係心臟肌肉變強呢一樣嘢咧，書本都有教你噶。你個心臟變強咗啦，但係因為心臟肌肉嘅壁咧係變厚咗，咁同我哋練隻老鼠仔一樣啫。隻老鼠仔大啲，你個 bicep 大啲，你咪大力啲咯，舉重啲嘅嘢啦，係咪？咁所以啦，強勁啲嘅心臟肌肉咧，就能夠每一下收縮嘅時候就泵多啲血離開心臟咯。所以啦，整個思考應價咧，首先啦，你要講翻個心搏量嘅變化啦，因為題目冇講啊嘛。第二啦，就係心臟結構嘅改變啦。第三啦，就係呢個心臟結構嘅改變所導致嘅結果，即係話啦，點樣影響到呢個心搏量嘅變化，係咪？所以啦，第一句講完個搏量係會增加啦，咁我哋就要講下啦。哦，因為咧，當經過訓練之後咧，心腔咧個體積就會變大，所以啦，當心臟肌肉收縮將啲血泵走之前咧，個心腔咧係可以去收集多啲嘅血咧。跟住啦，就俾人再泵走嘅咁樣樣。又或者啦，你話咧心臟肌肉係變得厚咗，係嘛？心臟嘅肌肉大細增加咗，從而啦個心臟肌肉嘅收縮咧就強大咗、大力咗，所以啦就能夠泵多啲血啦。不如記緊咯喎，答呢款題目咧，其實同我哋嗰啲適應性特徵 （adaptive features） 嘅問題咧係一模一樣㗎。記緊係做緊個比較，你唔係話個心臟肌肉厚。心臟肌肉一向都厚噶啦，尤其是就係個心室 ventricle 係咪？咁但係啦，而家係個肌肉厚咗，係嘛？所以啦，佢個心臟肌肉收縮嘅時候，嗰度力咧就大力咗，就可以泵多啲血走。咁所以記緊做翻一個比較。而我哋嘅答案表達啦，咁啊同平時我哋講嘅一樣啦。第一句可以攞嚟做個主題句，然後第二、第三咧就做個解釋又得。又或者將第二、第三作為一個推論，然後第一句變翻做結論又可以。好，嚟到第3部分啦，就有關於咧以下呢個圖表嘅。咁呢個圖表就顯示咗啦，當呢個人啊喺訓練之前啊，佢喺唔同嘅運動強度底下，佢個心率係如何嘅。咁我哋理解下呢幅圖啦。運動強度當係 0啊嚇，最低嘅時候，即係話坐喺梳化嚇睇緊世界盃食緊雪糕嘅時候，咁佢個心率就梗係一個最平靜嚇休息嘅時候嘅心率啦嚇，一個相當嘅數字啦，係咪？跟住啦，慢慢開始增加個運動強度咯喎，行下公園啊，跑下圈啊，再跑快啲啊，舉下啞鈴啊，諸如此類啦。總之唔同類型嘅運動強度不斷增加嘅時候咧，佢個心率都要增加嘅。唔難理解啦，係咪啊？個心泵快啲就泵多啲血去我哋嘅手腳嘅肌肉去做運動啊嘛，係咪？然後啦，去到一個點咧，就叫做最高心率。喺呢度我落咗一句注腳先。所謂最高心率就係叫做最高，即係話唔會再有更高噶啦。最高心率呢一個咁樣嘅特徵咧，其實係受到我哋嘅年紀啊、我哋嘅基因啊所影響住嘅。係唔會受到你做運動所去改變得到嘅，因為最高就係最高，天命最高所以啦，就唔似嗰啲咧，沒有最無恥，只有更無恥，唔係嘅，心率最高就是最高啦。OK， 落咗呢句注腳先。咁題目就叫我哋啦，去畫翻一條曲線，去顯示翻當呢個人啦。訓練完之後，訓練咗1年啊嘛，係咪？咁喺唔同嘅運動強度底下，究竟佢個心率又會如何呢？咁成條題目啦，又係考翻我哋傳視技能啦，畫曲線啦。今次唔係 plot graph，今次係繪畫一條曲線啫。即係話你未必有一個實際嘅數據，但係嗰條曲線有一個相當嘅條件，你要達到咁先為之正確嘅。當中啦有一個關鍵嘅概念咧，係承接住第2部分嘅。咁由於個心臟肌肉變強咗啦，變厚咗啦，所以個心臟亦都變得強大。所謂嘅強大咧，根據頭先第2部分，我哋咪講個搏量啊，係咪？個搏量就係64去到88，對不對？而仲有一個數據咧，大家都要知道嘅。頭先一直唔講，而家講翻呢個紫色箭嘴先。其實你會見得到嘅，當呢個人咧休息緊嘅時候，佢個心率係由75去到60嘅。係嘛？休息緊嘅時候，即係話啦，唔係做緊運動嘅時候係60㗎。OK， 即係話啦，最基本喺呢個 hea 緊嘅時候，坐喺梳化食雪糕睇世界盃嘅話咧，應該係由低一啲嘅起點去開始嘅，對不對？嗱，紮住袋先，陣間我哋繼續講。然後咯，整個思考邏輯啦，由於心臟嘅肌肉強大咗，心臟肌肉收縮嘅時候啦，就可以泵更加多嘅血，就去到我哋嘅手腳，對不對？所以啦，根據頭先第2部分，我哋訓練後之後啦，我哋個搏量咧係提升咗嘅。喺休息緊嘅時候，其實個搏量已經係增加咗噶啦。然後啦，就有更加多嘅血液泵去我哋嘅骨骼肌肉啦，從而啦令到有更強嘅肌肉收縮去應付更加劇烈嘅運動嘅。即係咩意思咧？即係話啦，相比起以前你做緊同樣嘅運動強度嘅情況底下，其實低少少嘅心率都足以支持到同等嘅運動強度啦。隨意俾個數字你去理解一下，喺訓練之前你個心臟一泵係泵到1份嘅血，我費事講幾多個 liter 1份嘅血。而家啦，你訓練咗成年啦，你個搏量係增加咗噶嘛？一泵嗰一下，你係泵到2份嘅血，係咪？咁你話啦，唔好啦，用翻64到88啦，嗱，增加咗就係增加咗啦，係咪啊？增加咗24個 cm cube 啊嘛，係咪？即係話訓練完之後，當你心臟泵一下，其實就泵多咗血俾你嘅手腳啦，已經。咁你仲需唔需要泵咁快，嘣去應付同等嘅運動強度啊？就不需要啦，對不對？所以訓練後咧，你嘅心率咧應該係下降嘅，咁咪75去到60咯。哪怕呢個人係休息緊嘅時候又好，又或者做緊運動嘅時候都好，心率咧應該都係相對上低一啲嘅。所以啦，條曲線應該係咁嘅樣嘅。有啲咩條件要留意咧？就係整體成條曲線咧係坐低咗嘅。第一點你要留意嘅，頭先講咗噶啦，係嘛？當你個人 hea 緊嘅時候，休息緊嘅時候，都已經75去到60啦，所以個起點係咪一定係低咗啊？對不對？然後啦，喺同等嘅運動強度底下，其實啦，你所需要嘅心率都係低過訓練之前嘅，對不對啊？咁所以啦，低啲，係咪？然後啦，去到第3點啦，就係當我哋嘅心率去到最高嘅時候， 其實係可以支持到呢個人做一個更高嘅運動強度嘅運動，對不對？所以啦，喺較高嘅運動強度底下咧，先會去到一個相同嘅最大值，呢個叫最高心率。頭先我同大家講過啦，最高心率就係最高心率，沒有更高，只有呢個最高，對不對？所以啦，呢一條曲線咧係唔會爆超越咗，突破咗個天際，係嘛嚇？超過咗呢個最高心率嘅。咁而家咧，我哋就嚟睇下唔同同學嘅答案咯噃。第一幅圖想同大家講下嘅咧，就係有關於咩叫做訓練後嘅心率啊。呢位同學咧有啲誤解咗，佢以為訓練後即係咧今日啦，嗱而家咧阿教練咧就帶你去跑圈啦，訓練之前咧就咁樣嘅，訓練中間就咁樣嘅，訓練之後就咁樣嘅。嗱咁訓練之後啦，飲啖水啊，坐低休息下，咁咪低翻咯。咁我相信佢係誤解咗呢個意思。其實佢問緊經過咗12個月嘅訓練之後，呢個人嘅心率係有咩變化？咁所以啦，睇翻呢幅圖其實個 X 軸咧，你都會覺得，佢都唔係講緊時間啊嘛，佢講緊強度噶嘛，係咪啊？咁所以啦，訓練前佢就照抄翻呢一條 curve 啦，係咪？然後啦，訓練中去到最頂啦，跟住訓練完啦，係嘛？即係喂收工咯，教練話今日都跑夠啦，今日跌翻，咁其實就係有啲誤解啦，係咪啊？然後啦，去到第二幅圖啦，就係咧訓練前就咁樣嘅，訓練後咧就係咁樣嘅。咁咧首先其實個抄幅圖咧都有啲失誤嘅，因為冇理由係零呢度開始嘅，即係話啦，當你運動強度係零嘅時候咧，你嘅心搏率竟然係零，咁即係點啊？我坐喺梳化食雪糕睇世界盃，我嘅心率係零嚟㗎，即係唔跳嘅。你諗下喎，佢真係由零開始喎，佢唔係低喎，佢由零開始喎，即係你話你連做烏龜都唔係喎。係咪？咁所以呢幅圖就係由個起手點咧，都已經係錯咗啦。雖然啦，個訓練後嘅曲線咧，的確係低過訓練前嗰條曲線，但係你都係由零開始，我覺得有啲奇怪啦，對不對？然後啦，去到呢兩幅圖咧，都係一個相反嘅概念嚟嘅。做完訓練之後啦，由最高跌到落最低，由最高跌到落最低。咁你諗下啦，其實一開波呢個起點咧已經錯咗。運動強度係零嘅時候，即係當呢個人休息緊啊嘛，係咪？咁其實你見翻個圖表就75到60啊嘛，其實一定係跌咗噶嘛，對不對啊？咁所以呢一個起點一定係喺呢一度下面開始，係嘛？下面開始，咁冇理由上高開始嘅。咁但係有一樣嘢咧，我又覺得其實佢係諗錯咗啫，佢個思維咧可能係啱嘅，就係咧。做完運動之後，其實個心率應該下降，即係我覺得佢係想表達到個心率下降嘅呢個概念，即係低一啲嘅概念，但係佢就變咗做下降咗咯，因為啦佢冇留意到呢個 X 軸咧係運動強度，佢唔係個時間，咁其實要講時間其實都好奇怪嘅，OK，咁所以呢兩幅圖咧都係錯嘅。然後去到第三幅圖咧，起點變咗一樣，咁即係話。擺到明係冇睇到數據做人啦，75落到60喎，60係低啲噶嘛，係咪啊？咁所以啦，佢個起點已經一樣咗啦，對不對？然後啦，訓練後嗰個曲線咧，係直頭係喺個訓練前嘅曲線以上喎，即係話同等嘅運動強度底下咧，訓練後嘅心搏率咧，竟然係比訓練前為之高喎。咁即係其實你個人越練越廢喎。係咪啊？你個訓練完之後咧，哎呀，我喺做用同樣嘅運動之後咧，我已經 feel 到boom boom 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 boom咁樣跳緊嘅，咁其實有啲反常喎，係嘛？練嚟都唔知做乜嘢，跟錯教練啦，我估係。跟住啦，又睇下呢兩幅圖咯，個起點係啱嘅，係嘛？訓練後嗱嗰個心搏率咧喺最 hea 嘅時候，咁咪由低出發啦，係咪？咁啊每個點都係低嘅，OK？但係啦。去到最高心搏率嘅時候無以為繼，冇上到去最高，直頭 level off，OK？咁其實有啲奇怪嘅，即係話當繼續增加強度嘅時候，咁點啊？有冇數據啊？即係冇數據嘅，竟然係即係唔心跳，係嘛？我唔畫啫，咁點解你唔畫咧？係咪？咁你個人總有機會係去到最高心率噶嘛？咁但係幾時先去到就要應付更高強度嘅運動。咁你先上到最高心率，咪就係呢個意思啫嘛，係咪？然後啦，就去到呢兩幅圖啦，就係突破天際，超越人類極限，就係過咗你嘅最高心率。 當然呢幅圖咧就唔係淨係呢度錯啦，係嚟到呢度起點已經錯咗啦，係咪？咁所以啦，前面又錯，後面又突破天際，咁自不然成幅圖都錯啦。都係嗰句，我哋嘅最高心搏率咧係受到我哋嘅基因同埋年紀所影響嘅，就唔係話訓練咗咧就可以爆升嘅。然後啦，到呢幅圖咧起點係啱嘅喎，嗱都係低嘅，但係啦呢度又講突破天際啦，又天元突破超越極限啦，咁所以呢度咧個尾巴就錯咗咯。第三部分咧，除咗講個心搏率之外咧，我想借呢個機會咧講下我哋嘅肺容量。呢幅圖咧，我相信大家唔陌生嘅，有幾個數字咧，大家係需要學識嘅。第一就係個 tidal volume 潮氣量，就係當我哋正常呼吸嘅時候啦，攤喺度，攤喺梳化食雪糕睇世界盃，正常嘅呼吸。我而家教緊書、拍緊片嘅，都係呢個咁嘅潮氣量嚟嘅啫。然後啦，就去到 vital capacity 肺活量，肺活量係牽涉咗我哋先深吸到盡，然後再深呼到盡，呢個就叫做肺活量。我哋先深吸再深呼嘅一個最大空氣量嘅變化，呢個叫肺活量。然後啦，即使我哋呼到最盡，都仲有一啲空氣殘留喺個肺當中嘅，呢個咧就叫餘氣量 （residual volume）。而我哋將肺活量嘅數字同餘氣量嘅數字加埋，呢個就係我哋整個肺嘅總氣量 （total lung capacity）。咁頭先我哋就講咗啦，經過咗1年嘅體能訓練之後咧，其實我哋嗰個最高心率咧，其實係唔會增加嘅，因為最高心率就係最高心率。但係有關於體能訓練對個肺活量嘅影響咧，呢一度我有條題目想問下大家啦。我而家有2個情況俾大家。第一個情況就係呢個人咧就俾阿教練捉落去，喂，你而家跑10K 俾我睇，就只係跑1次咁大把嘅啫。第二個情況就係日日捉呢個人跑10K， 究竟啦邊個情況底下係能夠令到呢個人嘅肺活量獲得一個更加長遠嘅增加呢？咁你參考翻我哋整個呼吸系統嘅運作去解釋你嘅答案啦。嗱，即係當然啦，即係能夠增加咗我哋嘅肺活量啊，即係長遠增加，即係想話俾你聽，你練嘅體能練得好咗啫。咁即係話你唔練一排嘅話，你個肺活量係會下降翻嘅。咁究竟係第一個情況定係第二個情況咧？咁留言區留低你嘅答案，亦都嘗試下解釋下俾我聽啦。咁答案咧，我亦都會加埋嗰啲練習啦。輯咗一份筆記啊、練習啊，俾大家下載翻嘅。留意翻個下載嘅連結咯噃。到題目最後一部分啦，成條題目咧，你見到個脈絡其實好清晰嘅。首先問搏量啦，跟住問心率啦，去到最後尾終於問心輸出啦。題目就要我哋去解釋一下呢一個人啊，訓練之前同之後佢休息時間嘅心輸出嘅改變。咁都係嗰句啦，題目咧係冇話過俾你聽個心輸出量嘅變化嘅，所以啦喺個答案當中咧有1分咧，你係要提及咗心輸出量係增加咗 cardiac output 咧由4800去到5280個 cm cube per minute 嘅，然後再解釋下點解訓練咗之後個心輸出量係會增加咗咧。咁呢條題目啦，自不然就係考翻全市技能嘅指出及解釋啦。題目就考翻我哋咧點樣去計個心輸出。呢條題目一開波已經講過啦，其實就係將搏量乘翻心率就係心輸出咯。同一時間咧，我都要結合翻之前嘅部分所講嘅嘢，就係心臟結構嘅改變啦，係一個大啲嘅心腔啦 ，heart chamber 大咗啦，同埋啦個心臟肌肉咧就強咗嘅。咁呢2個因素咧都會令到個心臟收多啲血啊，或者泵血嘅時候咧泵得多一啲嘅。咁我哋就嚟睇下個思考應搞啦。第1分你一定要講嘅就係個心輸出量嘅變化，就係啦訓練咗之後咧喺一個靜止或者休息緊嘅時間，佢個心輸出量咧係上升咗嘅。有數據就用數據啦。卷2咧其實都有好多數據咧係可以俾你引用嘅。咁今次你可能啦，你驚自己計錯，你就唔引用啦。但係有陣時啦，題目俾咗資料你嘅話咧，最好咧就引用埋佢嘅，令到你個答案咧更加全面嘅。所以啦，呢度咧就加埋落去咯。由4800增加咧去到5280個 cm cube per minute。然後啦就要去諗下啦，利用翻條公式去解釋翻呢個改變咯。咁當我哋根據翻呢條題目嘅1、2、3部分啦，其實我哋會發現得到啦，搏量係增加咗嘅。 但係心率係下降咗嘅喎。係啦，你冇理由淨係講話搏量增加咗啊，所以呢個心輸出就增加啦。因為你要知道，心輸出其實係搏量同埋個心率乘埋㗎。但係你會發現，喂，一升一跌喎，搏量上升，心率下降，呢兩個改變實質對個心輸出咧，應該有個相反影響嘅喎。一個數大啫，但係另一個數細咗嘅喎。你點樣可以肯定個心輸出量係高咗咧？就係因為啦，雖然訓練咗之後個心率係下降，但係搏量嘅增加嘅比例係較大嘅。啦，我哋就知道原來個搏量係對於個心輸出嘅影響咧，係大過個心率嘅下降對個心輸出嘅影響嘅。咁樣個答案當中咧，其實佢係冇咗粉紅色呢一句嘅。咁呢一句咧係我加落嚟俾你，等你知道原來咧我係要咁樣解釋嘅。咁所以啦，喺個建議答案當中咧，其實我覺得可以加多少少嘢，去令到整個答案咧係更加具體同埋圓滿一啲嘅。而家綠色呢一句咧，第三部分咧就要解釋嗰個正影響，因為你會發現一升一跌啊嘛，係咪？咁出到嚟個結果係升，咁你就用翻粉紅色呢一句咧去作出解釋咯。咁除咗呢個答案之外咧，建議答案咧仲有另一個嘅，就係有關於當你經過咗呢個訓練，日日月月嘅訓練之後咧，其實你嘅身體肌肉量係增加咗，你個人嘅基礎代謝率都係增加咗，即係話你整體嘅身體細胞咧，佢所需要嘅養分啊、氧氣啊，都比你訓練之前咧係為之多嘅。所以啦，你嘅心輸出都要增加，從而去供應多啲嘅血液俾你嘅肌肉啊或者身體細胞。不過咧，我對呢個紅色嘅答案咧有另外一個睇法，其實佢唔係答緊呢條問題嘅。佢係答緊呢一條問題，就係想我哋去解釋一下訓練咗之後休息時佢心輸出量嘅變化嘅重要性。嗱，你仍然要講出心輸出量變化啦，係咪？就係增加咗嘅。咁但係佢嘅重要性其實就係提供多一啲嘅養分、氧氣俾我哋嘅肌肉或者身體細胞。其實呢個紅色嘅答案咧，應該更加聚焦係答緊呢一件事。反而啦，而家去到第四部分呢一度咧，其實佢冇嗰個重要性嘅概念嘅，佢純粹就係要你解釋下，喂，點解訓練完之後咧，嗰個心輸出係增加咗嘅？咁所以佢原本嗰個建議答案咧，係真係答到呢一件事嘅，但係個紅色呢個答案咧，就未必係答緊呢一樣嘢啦。咁啊 Part A 咧就揀到呢度，有問題咧隨時喺留言區問翻，盡快答翻你。我哋下條片再見啦，拜拜。Hello student, I'm Mr. Leung. So let's talk about the 2025 Paper 2 Section A, Human Physiology, Part A. A young man participated in an aerobic exercise training program for a year. Before and after the training program, researchers measured changes in the blood volume in his left ventricle within a cardiac cycle at rest. So you can see the result. Have time as the x-axis and the volume of the blood in the left ventricle within a cardiac cycle in the y-axis. And for the part 1, we need to calculate the stroke volume, heart rate, and the cardiac output of the young man before and after training. In this question, surely it checks us the cyanotic skills, particularly how can we read the graph. So for the y-axis, it's very important for us to find out 1 square, it means 4 cm cube. Because 5 squares, it means 20 cm cube. So we get this information. And then we need to do the calculation for the cardiac output. How can we calculate it? We use the stroke volume times the heart rate. And I would like to grab this chance to talk about the definitions of these 3 terms. Heart rate is the number of heartbeats per minute. Stroke volume is the volume of the blood pumped by the left ventricle in 1 heartbeat. And the cardiac output is the volume of the blood pumped by the left ventricle per minute. So let's take a look at the stroke volume. Actually, we need to observe the peak and the trough of the curve. Let's take a look at this curve before training. So the peak is 120 cm cube. And for the trough, which is 56 cm cube, because we have 4 squares here, it means 16 cm cube, and plus 40 cm cube, it will be 56 cm cube. So the answer will be 64 cm cube. And after training, we take a look at these 2 red line. So the peak is 140 cm cube, and then for the trough is 52 cm cube. So the answer will be 88 cm cube. And for the heart rate, we take a look that for the whole curve, it takes 0.8 seconds to finish one cardiac cycle. So it means that for one heartbeat, it takes 0.8 seconds to finish it. So in 1 minute, so how many 0.8 seconds? So the answer will be 75. And then for the after training curve, it takes 1 second for one heartbeat. So it means that one heartbeat, 1 second. So in 1 minute, how many seconds? 60 seconds. So the answer will be 60. And for the cardiac output, we just multiply the stroke volume with the heart rate, and then we get the answer 4,800 and the 5,280 cm cube per minute. And then for part 2, with reference to the answer in part 1, suggest one structural modification of the heart that would lead to the changes in the stroke volume at rest after training, and explain your answer. Now remember that in this question, it doesn't tell us the change in the stroke volume, but we can take a look at the answer in part 1 and then get the idea. So surely you can find that the stroke volume increases from 64 cm cube to 88 cm cube. So for this question, surely it's also checking us the synoptic skills, suggest and explain. And for the scaffolding, remember that you have to mention the change in the stroke volume, which is increased, right? So that's why for the first mark, you need to mention stroke volume increases after training. And then for the concept checking, you need to recall the structure and the function of the heart, and also determine the modification of the heart, which is related to the changes in the stroke volume. So for the heart structure, surely there is cardiac muscle. So when the muscle contracts, it will pump the blood. And there are also 4 chambers in the heart to collect the blood, to receive the blood. And you can also refer to the textbook to determine the modification of the heart, which is related to the changes in the stroke volume. The heart becomes stronger as the cardiac muscle wall becomes thicker. So it can contract more powerfully to pump more blood, right? So for the thinking logic, what are the possible reasons of increased stroke volume? It could be the bigger heart chamber to receive or accommodate more blood, or stronger heart muscle to pump more blood out of the heart. Therefore, for the whole scaffolding, you need to talk about the change in the stroke volume, and then mention the structural modification to the heart, and then talk about the consequence of this structural modification to the heart. So after training, you can talk about the heart chamber increase in size, and then more blood can fill the heart before being pumped out. Also, you can talk about the heart muscle wall becomes thicker and the muscle size increases, and there is stronger muscle contraction to pump more blood out. So you can see that this question is talking about the adaptive features. So when we are talking about the adaptive features, you need to do the comparison. We do not just talk about the heart muscle, they are thick, or the heart muscle wall, they become thicker. And then there is a stronger muscle contraction to pump more blood out. So remember to talk about the comparison before and after the structural modification of the heart. For the answer presentation, you can use the statement 1 as the topic sentence, and then statement 2 and 3 as the explanation, or you can use the statements 2 and 3 as the deduction, and then use the statement 1 as the conclusion. And then for part 3, the graph shows the heart rate of the person and different exercise intensities before training. So for the x-axis is the exercise intensity. So you can see that at the very beginning, very low exercise intensity, or maybe we got it as 0. It means that we are sitting on the sofa, watching World Cup, eating ice cream. So that means we are just at rest. So we have a certain heartbeat rate. And then with a higher exercise intensity, maybe walking, jogging, running, run faster and faster. So, and then you can see the heart rate increase, and then reach the maximum heart rate. And one thing I would like to mention before we talk about the question is that maximum heart rate is the maximum value. No higher than this value at all. because the maximum heart rate is determined by our age and our genes. So that's why it will not be increased after training. And then for the y-axis is the heart rate. And now the question asks us to sketch a curve to show the heart rate of the person at different exercise intensity after training. So in this question, surely checking the cyanotic skills, curve sketching, and for the critical concept is that the heart becomes stronger as the cardiac muscle becomes thicker. And then the whole thinking logic will be that with the stronger heart muscle contraction to pump more blood out, and then the stroke volume increases after training. That's what we know that, right? From 64 to 88 cm3. And then more blood will be pumped by the heart to the skeletal muscle for stronger muscle contraction to do more vigorous exercise. What does it mean? It means that lower heart rate is enough to support the same exercise intensity. You can see that at rest, the heart rate will be 75 to 60 beats per minute. Therefore, the heart rate decreases after training, and that's why you can get the result 75 to 60 beats per minute, right? So the curve will be like this. Any features of the curve? First of all, the entire line will be lower. So the first point you need to be aware is that when the exercise intensity is 0, that means at rest, the heart rate is already lower from 75 to 60, right? Therefore, the whole curve starts at a lower point. And then for this statement, lower heart rate is enough to support the same exercise intensity. It also shows that in the same exercise intensity, before training, after training, we can see that after training, lower heart rate is enough to support the same exercise intensity. So for the third point, you can see that the same maximum heart rate can support higher exercise intensity of the person, right? So you can see that reaching the same maximum value at a higher exercise intensity. And now we are going to analyze different types of graph to show that what's wrong with that. This student misunderstood the question. What does it mean the after training? So that's why for the curve, okay, x-axis exercise intensity, y-axis heart rate. So it is the before training, and this it shows that during the training. For this part is after the training. Surely the student misunderstood that the x-axis is the time, but it's not. X-axis is the exercise intensity. So he or she may misunderstood that, for this curve is before the training. That means the person just went to the stadium, okay, the sports center, just before the training. And then during the training, he's really running. And then after the training, it means that after training, and then the coach told him, you go to take a rest and then drink some water, for example. So that means the heart rate will going down. So absolutely misunderstanding the question. And for the second graph, you can see that the mistake is here. How come at the 0 exercise intensity, that means at rest, so the heart rate is 0. Even copy the curve, he or she copied the wrong curve, right? So actually it starts from here, not from 0, not from 0. So for the starting point is already wrong. Although it shows that, after training, the heart rate is lower. Somehow he would like to show the concept, but the starting point is wrong, so the whole curve is wrong. And then for these two curves, okay, the student can think about that, the heart rate decreases, right? So it shows that decreases, but they overlook that the x-axis is the exercise intensity. So you can see that the misconception, the mistake is that at rest, how come the heart rate is higher than before training? So that's why these two curves wrong. And for this curve, the first mistake is that they start at the same point. From the graph, you know that the heart rate decreases from 75 to 60. So not the same point, right? And then after training, how come the curve, it becomes higher than the curve of before training. It also doesn't make sense, right? So this curve also wrong. And then what about these two? You can see that the starting point, correct. The whole curve is really lower. However, how come this curve, it doesn't reach the maximum heart rate? It should reach the maximum heart rate to show that the same maximum heart rate can help the person to do a rigorous or higher exercise intensity. That's why for this curve, part of it is correct and part of it is incorrect. For these two graphs, I just mentioned it. The maximum heart rate is already the maximum. And then the heart rate cannot be higher than the maximum heart rate. Therefore, for this graph, one mistake, starting point the same, not correct. And then the heart rate become higher than the maximum heart rate, also wrong. For this curve, this part is correct, starting point is correct. However, the maximum heart rate, it become higher, is also not correct. And in this question, it talks about after training, so the maximum heart rate doesn't change. But what about the lung volume? Under normal condition, we breathe in and out certain volume of air in each breath. It is the tidal volume, and this volume increases when we force ourselves to breathe out as much as we can after the deepest inhalation, which is the vital capacity. We have the forced inhalation, inhale, and then exhale. It is the vital capacity. However, a certain volume of gas is still left in the lungs after the deepest exhalation. It is the residual volume. And therefore, if we add up the vital capacity and the residual volume, it will be the total lung capacity. So I have one possible question variation to ask you all. I want you to compare the following two cases. Case 1, a person runs for 10 kilometers for the first time. That means one single time of exercise. And then case 2 is that a person runs for 10 km daily as part of a regular aerobic training program. So which case will lead to a long-term increase in the person's vital capacity? Explain your answer with reference to the respiratory system. So you can try to share your answer in the comment section, and I will also put this question and with some other question exercise to be an exercise note, and then you can download it for your revision. In this question, part 1, 2, we talk about stroke volume. Part 3, we talk about the heart rate. And in part 4, finally, we talk about the cardiac output. The question asks us to explain the changes in the cardiac output at rest before and after the training. So surely you can see that cardiac output increases. So for this question, surely it checks us the cyanotic skills, state and explain. State what? You need to state the changes in the cardiac output from 4,800 to the 5,280 cm³ per minute. And then the concept checking, we need to do the calculation of the cardiac output. We need to know how can we calculate the cardiac output, and I showed you the formula before. And then we need to record the structural modification to the heart. Bigger heart chamber to receive or accommodate more blood. Stronger heart muscle to pump more blood out of the heart. And for the whole scaffolding, first of all, you need to state the changes in the cardiac output. Therefore, you need to mention that the cardiac output at rest has increased after training from 4,800 cm³ per minute to 5,280 cm³ per minute. So in paper 2, there are lots of data for you to quote. And in this question, because the data, you need to calculate it in part 1. If you are not that confident, you can calculate the correct answer. You can choose not to quote the data, talk about the numbers, right? But if you are confident that your calculation is correct, I suggest you to include the number to make your answer more comprehensive. And then for part 2, you need to use the formula to explain the change in the cardiac output. So now we know that the cardiac output increases. So how can we explain it? Oh, it's very easy, Mr. Leung, because the stroke volume increase, right? Increase in 24 cm³ or increase 37.5%. However, you need to know that cardiac output is the product of the stroke volume and heart rate. Stroke volume increases, yes, I agree, but what about the heart rate? heart rate decreases, lower 15 beats per minute or lower 20%. So the concept is that the two changes have the opposite effect on cardiac output. One increases, one decreases. However, overall effect, the net effect is the cardiac output increased. So you need to explain the net effect on the changes in the cardiac output. Although the heart rate decreases after training, the stroke volume increased by a greater proportion. So you know that I use the percentage change to show you the idea of the proportion of increase or decrease. So the effect of increased stroke volume overweight the effect of the decreased heart rate on the cardiac output. Many students, they don't understand why they need to mention this green statement. I also add this pink statement to make the whole logic more comprehensive and you can understand it easily. And we have another answer is that after training, any physiological change in our body, so the muscle mass of the body has increased and the basal metabolic rate of the person has also increased. Therefore, the cardiac output increases to supply more blood to the muscle or the body cells. So for these two answers, I prefer you write down the first answer. Because for the second one, this red answer, somehow I don't think it's really answering this question. Explain the changes in the cardiac output at rest before and after training. This answer, it seems like that to answer this question, explain the importance of increased cardiac output at rest after training. So we talk about the importance and the benefit. Because after training, the muscle mass of the body increased or the basal metabolic rate of the person has also increased. So the benefit of the increased cardiac output is to supply more blood to the muscle, to the body cells. So that's the part A question. If you have any question, please feel free to leave it in the comment section. I will answer you as soon as possible. See you in next video. Bye bye.